Ethan Miles drove carefully through the thick snow. The road wound between tall, dark pines, and the storm made it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. The wipers pushed away the heavy flakes again and again, but they kept falling fast. He had driven on this road many times before. His cabin sat beside a quiet lake only an hour away. It was supposed to be his place for peace after long days of work. Tonight it looked like the whole world had been covered in white silence. He was tired. A long week of meetings and calls had filled his mind with noise. He looked forward to a weekend without emails or phone rings. He wanted to light a fire, drink coffee, and listen to the wind. His son Noah had called earlier asking if he was sure about going alone, and he had said yes. He said he liked the quiet. But as the storm grew stronger, Ethan wondered if he should have waited for morning. Up ahead, a strange red light blinked faintly through the whirling snow. At first he thought it was a reflection, and he realized it came from a car's hazard lights. The vehicle was half off the road, mostly buried by snow piled high around the wheels. He slowed down and stopped his SUV nearby. A gust of cold air rushed in as he opened his door. The sound of the wind hit him hard. He pulled his coat tight and moved toward the stranded car. The driver's door was slightly open. A small figure bent near it. She looked up suddenly, her face pale in the moonlight that flickered through the falling snow. Her hands clutched to small bundles wrapped in blankets. Ethan's heart jumped when he saw tiny faces under the cloth. Babies. "Are you all right?" he called out above the wind. The woman shook her head. "There's no heat." Her voice trembled with cold and worry. "I've been trying to keep them warm." He stepped closer and saw tears frozen on her cheeks. The babies made faint sounds and moved in her arms. Ethan reached out. "You can't stay here. It's too dangerous. My cabin isn't far." She looked uncertain. "I don't want to trouble you." "It's no trouble," he said quickly. "You and the children need to get warm now." She hesitated for a second, then nodded. He helped her to his car, making sure the twins were wrapped tightly. Inside, he turned the heat up and handed her his spare coat. Her lips were trembling, and her hands shook badly. "Thank you," she whispered. "I didn't think anyone would come this way tonight." Ethan gave a small smile. "You picked the worst night to drive. I'm Ethan. Lily," she said softly. "Lily Hart." As he drove through the snow again, she told him her car had stopped early in the evening. She tried to call for help, but her phone had died. She had been sitting there for hours hoping another car would pass. Her babies were only 2 months old. She had been praying they would not freeze before morning. Ethan listened quietly while keeping his eyes on the icy road. He could hear the fear under her calm voice. He'd heard it before in his own head on lonely nights after his wife died. The sound of someone trying not to break. At last they reached the cabin. The trees around it were heavy with snow. Warm light spilled from the windows as Ethan carried an armful of wood inside. Lily followed slowly, holding both babies close to her chest. The moment they stepped in, the air filled with the warm smell of pine and smoke. Ethan worked quickly to start a fire. The flames rose bright, painting the room with gold and orange. Lily sat near the hearth and unwrapped her babies one at a time, checking their tiny faces. Their skin looked pink again, and their little hands curled against her. She sighed with relief and closed her eyes for a moment. Ethan brought a thick blanket from the couch and placed it around her shoulders. "You're safe here," he said. "You can rest for a while." Tears filled her eyes again. "I don't know how to thank you." "Keep them warm," he said gently, nodding toward the babies. "That's enough." He poured hot water into 2 mugs and handed her one. For a while, they sat in silence, only the sound of the fire and the wind outside. Ethan looked at her and saw exhaustion, but also quiet strength. She seemed fragile, yet there was something steady in her eyes. The twins let out small cries, and Lily rocked them softly, humming a slow tune. It made the room feel strangely peaceful. Ethan leaned back in his chair and watched the snow drift against the window. He had not planned to see anyone tonight. I had wanted to be alone again. Now, 3 strangers sat in his home, and somehow it felt like he had been waiting for them without knowing it. The storm still raged outside, but inside there was warmth. And for the first time in a long while, Ethan felt the silence in his heart begin to lift. Morning came slowly to the cabin. The fire had burned low, leaving a soft glow that warmed the small room. Ethan woke to the faint sound of a baby's cry. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then he saw Lily sitting near the window with one of the twins in her arms. The other baby slept beside her in a basket wrapped in a blanket he had found the night before. Outside, the storm had quieted. The world was white and still. Lily looked up when she noticed him. "I hope we didn't wake you," she said softly. Ethan smiled a little and sat up. "I was already awake. How are they doing?" "They are fine now," she answered. "Last night, I thought I might lose them. The car got colder every hour. Kept praying someone would stop." Ethan walked to the fireplace and added more wood. He handed her a cup of warm water. "You don't have to thank me," he said, when she murmured gratitude again. "No one should be left out there in the cold." Lily held the cup carefully. Her hands were still red from frost. "You saved us," she said simply. "I had no place to go. I was trying to reach the next town. I thought maybe I could find work there." Ethan sat in the chair across from her. "What kind of work do you do?" "I'm a nurse," she said. "But the hospital where I worked closed down a month ago. They said we would get paid later, but the money never came. I stayed to help the patients who were still there because I couldn't leave them. When the building closed, I had nothing left. The rent on my apartment ran out. Last night I packed what I could and started driving." Ethan listened quietly. She spoke without bitterness, but her voice carried tiredness. "That must have been hard," he said. "It was harder to face silence," she whispered. "After my husband's accident, the house felt empty. The twins were so small, I thought if I kept working, I would stay strong. But I guess no one can stand alone forever." Ethan looked at the fire. He knew the truth of her words. His wife had died 5 years earlier. Since then, he had thrown himself into work, building his company until there was no room for anything else. Now, watching Lily cradle her babies, he began to wonder if it was only another kind of loss. He stood up and went to the kitchen corner. "Are you hungry? I can make breakfast. There's bread, eggs, and some fruit." Lily smiled faintly. "That sounds wonderful. I haven't eaten since yesterday afternoon." Soon the smell of cooking filled the room. The babies gurgled softly as the fire cracked. When he handed her a plate, she whispered another thank you. They ate quietly for a while, both too aware of how strange and yet simple the moment was. Two strangers sharing food after a storm, joined not by plan but by chance. After the meal, Lily walked to the window. The snow outside shone under the pale sun. "It looks peaceful now," she said. "You live here alone?" "I come here to rest when I can," Ethan replied. "Most of the time, I'm in the city. My son stays there. He visits sometimes, but I guess I don't make it easy for him." "You're working too much?" she asked gently. He nodded. "Work feels safe. Keeps my mind from wandering where it hurts." She smiled sadly. "I know that feeling. I used to think my job would keep me strong. Taking care of patients took away the weight of my own pain. But when the hospital closed, everything I used to lean on disappeared." The twins stirred again, and she turned to them, softening at once. Ethan watched her with quiet respect. Her movements were tender, but sure. There was a steadiness in her that drew him. When afternoon light reached the cabin walls, Lily looked uneasy. "I don't want to take your space for long," she said. "Once the road clears, I'll find a bus or something. I don't want to be a burden." Ethan shook his head. "You're not a burden. Stay until you can travel safely. The babies need warmth and rest. My car can handle rough roads, but small children shouldn't be out there yet." Lily hesitated before nodding. "Thank you. I don't have anyone else to ask." As the day passed, small sounds filled the space. The baby's breathing, the turning of pages from an old book Ethan picked up, the quiet hum of the heater. It was an ordinary calm, yet it felt new to both of them. Later, as evening came again, Ethan stood outside for a moment. The snow no longer fell, and stars glimmered faintly between clouds. He could hear the faint cry of one of the twins through the wooden walls. Inside was warmth, firelight, and the steady rhythm of life continuing. He realized he had not felt such peace in years. It surprised him how natural it seemed, as if this lost nurse and her babies had brought new air into his world. When he returned inside, Lily had put the babies to sleep. She looked up and smiled faintly, tired but calm. "Tomorrow will be better," Ethan said quietly. Lily nodded. "Yes, I think it will." In that quiet moment, the storm outside felt far away, and both of them knew something in their lives had quietly begun to change. The second morning arrived bright and clear. Sunlight slipped through the window and covered the cabin floor with a golden light. The storm that had trapped them had left behind tall white drifts and a silence that felt calm rather than dangerous. Ethan stood by the window with a mug of coffee, watching the smoke from the chimney curl up into the cold air. Behind him, he heard a soft laugh, the kind that surprises a quiet place. Lily was sitting on the floor with both babies. They were awake and wide-eyed, kicking under the blanket and waving tiny fists. She held one of them gently and smiled when Ethan turned around. "They like the sunlight," she said. "It must feel warm to them." "It looks like they like your voice more," Ethan said with a grin. "You're the one who makes them smile." She looked down at her children fondly. "They've been through a lot already," she said. "I just want them to feel safe now." Ethan watched her carefully fold one blanket and adjust the other. Her movements were steady and graceful. He felt a strange sense of peace just watching them, a sense of home he had not known in years. For so long, he had kept his days packed with tasks and decisions, hiding behind his serious work face. Sometimes it was easier to stay in control than to face what was missing. Now, in this quiet cabin, those walls inside him had begun to soften. After breakfast, he checked the main road. The plows had cleared most of it, but the snow still sat deep near the trees. He told Lily that they could probably drive down to the next town the following day if the weather stayed clear. She nodded but seemed uncertain. "I don't even know where I'll go," she said quietly. "I feel like every direction is empty right now." "You'll find your way," Ethan said. "You've already made it through the worst night of winter." She looked up and met his eyes. "You sound sure of that." "When my wife passed," he said slowly, "I thought that was the end of everything I had built in life. But then, one day at a time, I learned that nothing truly ends unless we give up. Life moves forward if we let it." Lily gave a small, tired smile. "Maybe that's true," she said. "But it's hard to believe in beginnings when you've lost everything." "Then start by believing in small things," Ethan replied. "Warm fires, sleeping babies, quiet mornings. They matter too." That afternoon, Ethan showed her the lake behind the cabin. It was frozen into a silver mirror under the light. They both walked carefully to the edge, his heavy boots leaving deep prints beside her smaller steps. The baby slept inside in a safe cradle Ethan had built years ago for his son. "It's beautiful," Lily said, looking out at the frozen water. "I come here when I need to think," Ethan said. "When the lake thaws in spring, this place changes completely. Sometimes I sit on that rock near the water and just watch the ripples." "I wish my life could feel that calm," Lily murmured. "Maybe it can," Ethan said. "Sometimes peace starts when you stop running." The cold made their breath visible, small clouds fading into the wind. When they turned back toward the cabin, Ethan noticed that Lily walked closer to him than before. It wasn't out of need but comfort, the natural closeness of two people who understood the silence around them. Inside, they spent the rest of the day tending to small things. Ethan fetched wood and checked the heater. Lily cooked a simple soup with the few ingredients available. The babies slept most of the afternoon, and now and then Lily would touch their tiny hands to make sure they were warm. As twilight neared, Ethan's phone buzzed. It was his son Noah calling. Ethan stepped aside and answered. "Hey, Dad, are you still up at the lake?" Noah asked. "Yes, the storm's over now," Ethan said. "Good. You sound different," his son said. "Not tired like before." Ethan looked toward Lily, who was humming softly to her sleeping babies. "Maybe I am different," he said. "There was someone out on the road last night. I helped her get to the cabin. She has 2 small children." "That sounds serious. Are they okay? They're safe?" Ethan said. "Just needed warmth and rest." "That's good." "You always tell me you like being alone, so I'm surprised," Noah said with affection in his voice. Ethan smiled. Maybe being alone isn't always the answer. He ended the call and put the phone down. For a moment, he thought about how strange it was that life could change direction without warning. One night you were driving home to loneliness. The next, you were making space by the fire for a woman and 2 infants you had never met. Later, as darkness filled the sky, they all sat near the embers of the fire. Lily was telling a quiet story from her days at the hospital about an old man who used to whistle every morning, no matter how weak he felt. Ethan listened, not to the words, but to the sound of her voice. Soft, real, alive. The babies slept soundly. The storm was long gone. And though Ethan knew this peace could not last forever, he also knew something new had started to open inside him. It was not pity, but the slow, unexpected comfort of caring for someone again. Outside, the snow glowed faintly under the moon. Inside, two lost souls shared warmth that asked for nothing, but gave everything. The cabin, once silent and lonely, now felt alive again. The next day began with the sound of a shovel scraping against the path outside the cabin. Ethan was clearing the snow so the car could move when the time came. The cold air bit at his cheeks, but he felt stronger than he had in months. Inside, Lily was feeding one of the twins, her hair falling forward while she hummed under her breath. The cabin looked warmer than ever, full of life and the faint smell of soup from the night before. Ethan came inside and stamped the snow from his boots. "Road looks good now," he said. "We can drive into town later today." Lily looked up. Her smile was weak. "Thank you. I know you've done more than enough. I'll find some place to stay once we reach the town." Ethan glanced at the babies in their blankets. "You don't have to rush," he said softly. "The roads are still slippery. Can stay another night if you need." She nodded, but he could see worry in her eyes. He guessed she was thinking of what waited ahead. After breakfast, Ethan loaded the car with a few blankets and water. Lily bundled the infants, kissing their little foreheads before stepping out. The air was sharp and carried the clean smell of winter pine. The drive down the hill was quiet. The snow stretched out endlessly on both sides, and beyond it the sky was a smooth sheet of white. When they finally reached the small town, Lily looked around with surprise. It was peaceful, but there was something solemn in the faces of the few people walking outside. Shops had signs that said closed for the week, and the only sound came from a passing truck. Ethan parked near a diner. "Let's stop for a meal," he said. "You could use something hot." Inside the diner, the smell of coffee filled the air. Lily sat beside the window while Ethan spoke to the waiter. She looked out at the street, watching the snow melt into small puddles. Her reflection in the glass looked tired but calm. When the food arrived, she tried to smile. "It feels strange to sit like this after everything that's happened," she said. "I've so long. I forgot what it's like to feel safe enough to eat in peace." "You'll have many lunches like this again," Ethan said kindly. "I hope so," she said while glancing down at her babies. "I want them to grow up with something better than what I've been through." Ethan studied her face. There was gentle determination there, the kind that comes only after loss. He wanted to keep her safe. It wasn't pity, but respect and something deeper, though he didn't name it. After their meal, they went to the small grocery store to buy formula and diapers. At the counter, two men stood talking loudly about the old hospital that had closed. Lily froze when she heard them mention it. "Did you hear about that nurse who disappeared?" one man said. "They say she quit when the trouble started. A cousin told me they lost some patient files and money during the shutdown." "She probably ran off before the police got involved," the other man replied. "You never know who's honest these days." Lily's face turned pale. She lowered her head, hoping they wouldn't notice her. Ethan paid for the groceries and led her outside quickly. Once in the car, she held her baby's clothes. Her voice shook when she spoke. "They think I ran away. They think I did something wrong." "Is it true?" Ethan asked gently, though he already knew the answer. "No," she said firmly. "I stayed until the very end. The hospital director told me he was keeping the records safe, and I believed him. 2 weeks later, the building closed, and he vanished. When the police came, they found nothing. I had no way to prove anything. People whispered that I must have been part of it, so I left." Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Should never have been left alone to face that. Lily's eyes filled with tears. I felt ashamed. Even when I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, I blamed myself for trusting the wrong people. The drive back to the cabin was quiet. Ethan could see her turning things over in her mind, the weight of old wounds pressing on her again. When they reached the cabin, Lily laid her twins down carefully and sat near the fire, staring into the flames. Ethan poured 2 cups of tea and brought one to her. "You can rest here until you decide what to do next," he said softly. "You don't have to face the noise out there yet." Lily looked up at him. The firelight touched her face, and he saw both exhaustion and strength in her eyes. "You're kind," she said. But I can't live here forever. I need to find a way to clear my name. I can help, Ethan said simply. My company has lawyers and investigators. If we find proof of what happened, they can make sure the truth comes out. Lily stared at him in disbelief. Why would you do that for me? Because no one deserves to be broken by lies, he said. You've carried enough. For a long time, she said nothing. The fire made small crackling sounds and one of the babies stirred in its sleep. Then she whispered, "Thank you." Ethan nodded, his gaze resting on the children. He knew his life would never return to the rhythm it had before. Something in him had changed. Helping her felt right, and somewhere in that truth he found a new kind of purpose. Outside, the last of the snow slid from the roof, falling softly to the ground. Inside, two lives that had once stood apart began to weave toward one another. Not through plans, but through quiet understanding. The night was silent, but in that silence, a promise seemed to form, unseen, but strong. Days passed and the snow around the cabin began to melt. The road that had once been blocked was now open, but Lily and the twins stayed a little longer. The small home near the lake had turned into a place of quiet healing. Ethan worked from his laptop in the mornings while Lily cared for the babies. At first they both moved around the cabin like guests afraid to disturb the peace, but soon their days found an easy rhythm. In the mornings, Lily would hum softly as she washed bottles in the kitchen sink. Ethan listened to her voice while checking company reports. He noticed how her presence filled the silence that had once made the cabin feel so empty. Sometimes she would make him tea and place it beside him without saying much. It became their quiet habit, a simple exchange that felt more comforting than words. One afternoon, Ethan returned from town with groceries and a box of formula. Lily thanked him, her fingers brushing his as she took the bags. For a second, the touch felt electric, not out of romance, but out of the warmth that comes when two lives quietly fit together. You didn't have to buy all this, she said. I know, he replied, but it makes me feel useful. She smiled slightly. You already are. Her words stayed with him all evening. Ethan had spent years believing his only worth came from his business success. Yet somehow this woman and her two small children made him feel far more human than any deal he had ever closed. That night, they had dinner by the fire. Lily laughed for the first time since they had met, a soft, clear laugh that lifted the air. Ethan found himself laughing too, not because of any joke, but because of how natural it felt. It reminded him that joy could exist even after pain. The next morning, while Lily fed the twins, Ethan received a call from his office. One of his assistants told him that the lawyers had found a name from the hospital investigation. The missing files had been traced to a man, the same director Lily had mentioned. Ethan felt a rush of anger, but kept his tone calm. He asked them to gather all the facts they could. When he ended the call, he turned to find Lily standing at the doorway holding one of the babies. Was that about me? She asked quietly. Ethan nodded. Ask some people I trust to look into what happened. They think they can clear your name soon. Lily's eyes filled with emotion. You shouldn't do this. It's too much to ask. You didn't ask, he said gently. I offered. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she whispered, You don't know what it means to have someone fight for me. Ethan met her gaze. Maybe I do. Later that day, they took a walk by the lake. The ice had begun to crack and shimmer under the sun. The sound of melting water echoed between the trees. Lily pushed the stroller with slow steps, and Ethan walked beside her. Do you ever miss the city? She asked. Sometimes, he said, but it never felt like home. There's too much noise, too much rush. Here I can breathe. For the first time, I think I'm starting to live instead of just working. Lily looked out at the shining lake. I wish I could start over somewhere quiet like this. You can, Ethan replied. There's a program at my company's clinic that needs trained nurses. You would be perfect for it. It includes a house nearby and daycare for employees, children. Lily stopped walking. You're serious? Completely, he said. You deserve a chance to rebuild. Let this be it. Tears filled her eyes again, but this time they were not heavy like before. I don't know how to thank you, she said. You already have, Ethan answered softly. You reminded me what kindness feels like. When they returned to the cabin, the twins were smiling and reaching out their small hands toward the light through the window. Lily lifted one gently and kissed his forehead. Ethan watched her with quiet wonder. There was strength in her every movement, a calm power born from surviving so much. That night they sat once more near the fire. He told her stories about Noah when he was younger, about how his son loved to build small toy airplanes, and would not sleep until Ethan tested each one. Lily listened with genuine warmth and shared how she used to sing for her hospital patients at night. Hours slipped by unnoticed. The flame burned low, and the twins nestled together asleep in their crib. Ethan looked at her across the firelight and said softly, "You should rest. Tomorrow will bring good news." She smiled gently. "You sound certain again?" "I am," he said. Before going to bed, Lily stood near the window and looked outside. The stars were sharp and silver above the dark trees. She thought of how this cabin had once been just a place of shelter, but had turned into a home full of second chances. She felt the first real piece of hope take root inside her. Ethan watched her from across the room, feeling a quiet warmth spread through him. He didn't know where life was leading, but he knew he wanted to see where Lily's road went. For the first time in years, he did not fear tomorrow. The night settled soft around them. The wind was calm, the fire flickered faintly, and the sound of the baby's gentle breathing filled the space. Two hearts, both once broken, were learning to trust the rhythm of peace again.